Look at these bowls on the wall.
Did you all get tickets from?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. I need to collect the tickets.
Mm-hmm. Is there 3 there?
There was
You don't, if you didn't get them, that's all right. I just have to have a count of who didn't get them, that's all.
Okay. I
What-
didn't know we had half tickets.
Well, we're up to 12. If it's just the 2 of you?
3.
3.
4 of us.
Yeah, she can't count.
Oh, 4. Okay, so that makes 14. Bluefield limestone. Tennessee marble is actually a limestone itself. It's very hard and it's as good or better than real marble. So if you ever get into a discussion about marble with anybody from Vermont or Georgia, they have real marble. But Tennessee marble is as good or better, but don't tell them that. Their marble is similar to what you would find in Italy. Okay, but Tennessee marble is used in the United States Capitol in D.C. Also, the West Wing of the Museum of Art in Tennessee, or in D.C., is Tennessee marble. The capitals of Colorado and Montana are all Tennessee marble. And the marble quarries have all been just about quarried out right now. There's one down in the Bonor area in Greenback that still you can get marble out of. And the new Catholic Cathedral they built on North Shore Drive has 2 columns that were made out of Tennessee pink marble. So Colonel Ramsey was born in Gettysburg, Pennsylvania. His dad fought with George Washington at the battles of Princeton and Trenton and during the Revolutionary War. Colonel Ramsey was never in the military. The title was an honorary title given to him after he moved here. He was trained as a surveyor. He came here in 1783 when he was 18 years old and already knew how to be a surveyor. Brought his tools with him. He had an uncle living in western North Carolina near Asheville, visited him, and then came over to this area. Fell in love with the area and bought 500 acres. We still have 50 of the 500 acres that he bought. The acreage went from here to John Sevier Highway, the main road out here, and then back that way. It was underwater. It was called Swan Pond at the time. And the reason it was underwater was the little creek that flows over here, the beavers had built a dam, and then that created the pond. And so what he did was he drained the pond because of his fear of malaria. And that was the disease that killed most people. You either died of malaria or tuberculosis if you lived in this area. But it didn't do very much good. He died in 1820 of malaria. His first 2 wives died of malaria. 3 of his children died of malaria.
Wow.
His daughter Eliza, he had 8 children, only 1 daughter. His daughter Eliza, he sent to school in North Carolina. We think that saved her life because she lived into her 20s. The children that he had before her all died of malaria. If you research the family history, you'll find 8 children, but only 6 different names. And the reason for that is they had a tradition back then, if a child died at childbirth or within the first year, they would name the next child the exact same name. So 8 children, 6 different names. He built a log cabin originally to live in where the visitor center is, and he lived there until this house was built, and it was started in 1795. And it was completed in 1797. The kitchen was added in 1801. His first wife, Anne Ramsey, she died in 1800. A year later, he remarried, and his second wife asked if he could have the kitchen added to the house. And Thomas Hope, the architect, agreed to it. He came back, designed the kitchen, and it was added because they didn't have to worry about fire. Most houses back then were either wood or made out of logs. So the kitchen got on fire, the whole house was gone. But here they didn't, and now the fireplace here is a very large fireplace for a house. That mantle across the top is 2 feet thick, and they didn't have to worry about burning the house down. If anything, the only thing that would burn would be this room above. This was used as a bedroom for guests and visitors. Sometimes he would have as many as 20 or 30 people staying in the house with him. He was fairly wealthy, and his farm was mostly orchards, apple, pear, peach trees, and vegetables. He did have livestock, and he had a small blacksmith shop, which we are going to recreate in the next year or so, I hope. He did have slaves. Most of the families that had any kind of money at all in East Tennessee did have slaves, although there were no plantations in East Tennessee like there were in Middle and Western Tennessee. When it came time for the Civil War, East Tennessee voted to stay with the Union. The other 2/3 of the state voted to stay, to secede and go south. So the slaves would work in here and eat and cook in here. The Ramseys themselves never ate in this room. The table was just for the people to prepare the food, the slaves to prepare the food. Some of the other signs of wealth. Egg boiler, you can boil a dozen eggs in here, hard boiled or soft boiled.
Let's go.
That meant that we had wealth. Sugar, this is how sugar came, it was compressed. They had what's called nippers, and they would break off pieces of sugar and then put it in their cups. Okay? They made their own silverware, they made pewter silverware, that's what they ate off of, and also the plates, they would make their own pewter plates. They did have china and porcelain, but they only used that for special occasions because if it got broke, it was either irreplaceable or very expensive to try and replace it. There's one of the pewter molds. What you see in here as far as the furniture goes, now a lot of the items were just donated and we put in here because they do fit the period. But when he died, his daughter Eliza had made an inventory. Her brother inherited the house and she had to do an inventory of everything that was in the house. And so that's how we know what's here. There are a few original pieces to the house that are here also. Another sign of wealth was a rotisserie. This has a spring in it. You would tighten the spring, hang a chicken or a piece of meat, put it on this, put it in the fireplace, and it would rotate and cook the meat for you. So,
Clever. What is this?
that is to an oil lamp. Then you would put the candle in there. Okay. And this was to make muffins or whatever. And they made their own candles. You see a candle mold in the other room. So, any questions about the kitchen? Okay, let's go on into the Great Hall. We call it the Great Hall because we did more than eat in there, okay?
Wow. Look at that. AC there? Move over.
That's a big part of the chair.
Okay, the Great Hall, like I said, they did more than eat in here. They would have parties in here, anniversary, birthday parties. He was also involved in politics. He never had an elected position in Knoxville, although his one son, Frank, was the first elected mayor of Knoxville. His other son, J.G.M. Ramsey, was involved in politics also. William Blunt and John Sevier were contemporaries of Colonel Ramsey, and they would have been in the house with him also. But his title of colonel was honorary because he was never in the military, but he did get into banking and land management and was involved in the creation of the state of Franklin, which was the attempt to make a state before Tennessee became a state. And that was done by people from western North Carolina, southwest Virginia, and Tennessee. The headquarters or the capital of the state of Franklin would have been in Jonesboro, Tennessee. And they actually built a building. If you go to the History Museum downtown in Knoxville, you'll see the key to that building, but it didn't last more than about 6 months. So in this room, like I said, they would do virtually everything. They would have parties, they would have political meetings, and they would have church services also. He was a very devout Presbyterian. The family came from Scotland and Ireland. They were Scotch-Irish. We left 2 of the doors standing. If you move and show them the door over there, that's called a Christian door. The top one is a panel form a cross, and the bottom 3 panels form an open Bible. And so if you see doors in historic houses, that means the family was Christian and they would have Christian doors. The one piece that is original to the period but not to the house is the chest of drawers over here. Thomas Hope, the architect who we brought from Charleston, South Carolina, was also an expert craftsman with woodworking. And he built that chest for a friend of Colonel Ramsey's. He also built one for Colonel Ramsey, but when the house was sold out of the family in 1865, we don't know what happened to a lot of the furnishings. So we know that Colonel Ramsey had a chest either exactly like that or very similar to it. If you notice, each drawer has its own keyhole, and each drawer also has its own key. So Mrs. Ramsey, when she would wear her key ring, she would have a key for each one of those drawers. So if you see pictures of southern mistresses of plantations, and they would have the key ring on their side, the more keys they had, the wealthier the family, because that means they had more drawers that had to be locked in so that the slaves or anybody couldn't get into it. They would keep the sugar in one of those drawers, and they would also keep this item in the drawers. Does anybody know what this is?
Bible?
It has Chinese markings on it, maybe give you a little bit of a clue. And the back is just a design. This was imported. I'll give you a hint, this is what they threw overboard in Boston Harbor.
Tea.
Yeah, this is tea. They bought tea compressed, and you would break off pieces of it and put it in your teacup, and then break off pieces of the sugar and put it in the teacup,
For how long?
and
Oh.
that's how you would drink tea.
Chocolate. Yeah, it's like chocolate.
Okay, now, some other features of the room. All the woodwork in the house that you see is original to the house and has never been repainted. We think it was repainted in the 1850s or early 1860s, right before the Civil War.
That's cool.
The plaster and the ceilings, the walls were all redone when we inherited the house. The house was sold out of the family in 1865 by his grandson because he didn't want to live in a house where a lot of relatives, his parents, grandparents, etc., had died. The house was sold 3 or 4 times, and between 1930 and right after the Second World War was used as rental property. But it was never electrified, and it was never had indoor plumbing. A couple other features, this is how they made the candles right here. Another feature that shows their wealth was the food warmer in the fireplace. And
That's
we
what
have one more
that is,
item
food warmer.
that only very wealthy families have. Anybody know what this is?
So,
Say it?
Toast?
toast.
Making toast, right, this is a toaster. What kind of toaster? It's on the
Fireplace.
floor in the fireplace. And how would you turn it on if it's on the floor? With your
Foot,
foot. This is a foot toaster.
foot toaster.
Okay, now
Never
I've seen
seen one of
these
them,
in
yeah.
museums in St. Augustine, in the oldest house. And I've also seen them in Newport, Rhode Island, and historic houses in Maine and in Georgia.
But mom knows. See the one.
What I thought interesting was in Newport, Rhode Island, they spelled toaster Toester.
Yeah, It's a toaster, all right.
T-O-E.
They gave the bomb.
Right. Now,
'Cause
one
they
other feature of
made
the
it with their
house is
foot.
the
With
shutters.
their toe.
I'll show you through this window here. The shutters are in the inside.
In case.
And this was done for security as well as convenience. And if you look at the outside of the house, you'll see that it would be very difficult to close the shutters from the ground. They would close them in
I've
the
never seen
wintertime to keep the heat in. As far as we know, the house was never under attack by the Cherokee. The Cherokee were fairly friendly. John Sevier, if you go to Marble Springs, his house, he built his house on the main north-south trail from Bristol to Chattanooga with the Cherokee used. And any problem that happened with Native Americans were handled by the creek, who would come down from Ohio or Kentucky. So, and they could seat as many as 20 to 30 people at the table. They had many leaves. And again, because of Elijah's inventory, we know what was in this room. The only thing that we put in here that was exceptional is that cake, cake display. That's from 1840, and that was donated. And we thought
Wow.
That's cool.
It's huge.
That's when they made a cake back then.
Upstairs, we can go out into the hall,
We
okay?
have some literature in that red bag that is being printed out. Thank you all so much.
Look at the old door. Look at that.
You're most welcome. Thank you. All right, come on into the parlor. Hey, Michelle. Ma'am? Can you guys tell Richard that we do another group while I'm taking? Sure. You know, shut the doors. Thank you. Come on in.
Hey, how are you?
Well, pretty good. I'm sitting down in air conditioning. That's pretty
That's
good.
right.
Welcome to our plantation. Where y'all from?
Not so.
Oh, you didn't know if you're from a country.
No, but
You can travel by horseback.
Come on in.
All the books.
Yeah.
George Washington's here too. Look, he was in the
All right,
Mabry
welcome
house.
to the parlor. And welcome to Ramsey House. I hear some folks are from Nashville. Everybody else pretty local or awesome, great. Good to have you out here. Anybody visiting any of the other historic homes while they're out and about? Yeah, awesome.
Mabry.
Good day to do that. Good to do.
Yeah.
Were they shooting guns at Mabry?
Yeah.
Yeah. They like to do that over there. Well, welcome to the parlor. This is where Colonel Ramsey and his family would have entertained dignitaries such as William Blount, John Sevier, all those folks, those early founding fathers of Knoxville he was bumping elbows with. Anybody from Maryville or familiar with Maryville? Isaac Anderson, founder of Maryville College, would have also been in that mix as well. They were really good friends. And you were really good friends with Isaac Anderson, weren't you? Yes. So Colonel Ramsey was obviously very well educated. He believed in education. He had a library, which we have, those are not his original books, but they are the books he would have had in his library. He had books on law, business, Oriental customs, poetry, sermons, you name it is in there. All 4 of his grown children were fluent in multiple languages, business, law. His daughter was, of course, fluent in all the ways of the women are fluent with. She was sent to an all-women's college after being homeschooled by Colonel Ramsey himself, and she learned things like home economics type things. So, we know that he also hired some folks to work with him, for him, and serve as tutors to locals in the area. We also know that he was really good friends with Reverend Carrick, and I don't know if anybody's told you that story along the way. Reverend Carrick actually is the first president of Blount College, which is now the University of Tennessee, and Colonel Ramsey sat on the original board of trustees for that. Colonel Ramsey's eldest son, JGM, was a historian and physician. He wrote a really important document in our early state's history, which is the Annals of Tennessee, which tells all about early Tennessee, how it became a state, etc. And Colonel Ramsey, early JGM Ramsey, was on the Confederate side during the Revolutionary War. He was living in a house about a mile from here, still on the Ramsey property, but in a house called Mecklenburg. And the Union troops, when they came through, they actually burned that place to the ground, which had all of family heirlooms, documents, portraits, etc. And also volume 2 of the Annals of Tennessee, which was ready to go to print. So we lost a very valuable history that day. Colonel Ramsey's other son, William B.A. Ramsey, was the first popularly elected mayor of Knoxville, served as Secretary of State for Tennessee, and also helped bring education, banking, hospitals to the area as well. JGM also funded bringing the railroad and steamboats. So they pretty much had a hand in all of the institutions that you see in Knoxville today, which is pretty interesting.
Tell them about my wives.
Yes, all right, let's tell them about your wives. So Colonel Ramsey married his first wife, Peggy Alexander, and she was known to be the love of his life, and she passed away from tuberculosis, which they call consumption. These chairs actually were given to Colonel Ramsey and his first wife, Peggy, as a wedding gift. So we are very, very happy to have these, one of our few original items here to the family. This tea set is also original to the family. Colonel Ramsey's eldest son, JGM, when he got married, this was a wedding gift. It's made of silver, made in Philadelphia around 1820. You'll see there's a bald eagle on the spout, just a little nod to the American patriotism. Now, Colonel Ramsey did go on to marry his second wife, Anne. She passed away with malaria, and then Colonel Ramsey married his third wife, Margaret. This is a modern portrait of what we think Margaret looked like. She had also been married twice before, of course, twice widowed as well. And each time she was married, she was pregnant, husband passed away, she gave birth to a child, as including Ramsey. So some people think that's a little odd. I just think it was coincidence, but there's also some records of her
being heavily involved in deciding what happened to the estate after her husband's passed away. She had also been married to Thomas Humes, which is, he owned the hotel, which is now the Bijou Theater. So they say after Colonel Ramsey died, then she went on back there to help run that business. I think she was just resourceful and very businesslike, so sticking up for herself.
She wasn't very pretty, but she had 6 sons, and when you have 2,000 acres, you're glad to have 6 more boys on your staff here to run this plantation. I just thought I'd inject that. We all-
Yes.
Yes, large families were very common back then, for sure. And most people think of plantation, think of cash crops, hundreds of enslaved people, etc. This was more East Tennessee style, which was a self-sustaining plantation, which just meant that they had crops that they needed to sustain the family. They had orchards, they did have a still house, would have grown herbs, vegetables, everything they needed just to sustain their family. They did have 6 enslaved people, 5 women and 1 gentleman. So that also tells you there wasn't a whole lot of farm, cash crop type plantation activity going on.
And the Yankees burned down our still house, so we had to stop that.
Any questions about this room, Ramsey's in general? All right, thank you, Colonel. We're gonna head upstairs.
Y'all enjoy it.
Thank you, sir.
Happy, you have to wish him happy birthday. We were also celebrating his birthday.
Good to see y'all. Is everybody from Knoxville in here?
Yes, we are.
I'm Fountain City, I guess that's.
We're gonna
Yeah,
head
that's
upstairs
close
and watch your
enough.
heads.
We're from West
Y'all
Knoxville.
enjoy.
Thank you, sir. I love your house.
Thank you. I do too.
Great.
That's my funeral home at the Duck Pond.
I think this is the oldest house I've ever been in.
That building's 136 years old. I sold that 8 years ago. I'm semi-retired. That's why I enjoy coming up here so much.
Oh,
I
yeah.
do. It's fun. Sometimes watch the old timey baseball league. It's really good.
Yeah.
They do it just like they did back then.
Oh, I saw the flyer for that.
They don't have an umpire. They have an arbitrator. He wears tuxedos, tails.
Oh, I've heard about it.
He's the umpire.
My mom's told me about that. That's cool. Thank
It's
you.
awful hot out there. Now, this is nice in here.
Yeah.
Good to
I like
see
it
you.
better in here too.
Enjoy your day here.
Thank you, sir. Oh, sorry.
You're welcome.
Huh? Oh.
You're gonna find out in a minute.
I'm so glad you're here. This,
I think this is the oldest
this
house I've been
first
in.
room has a feature that's unusual. Does anyone see something in this room that's an unusual feature for a upstairs room? Good Lord, thank you. We know this is original to the house because it's in the artist's rendering of the house. We believe it may have been used to allow them to carry all the furniture upstairs to the 2nd floor. This room, we believe, is where Thomas Hope, the architect, lived. Can you imagine having your architect living with you for 7 years? Kind of handy. He also had a wife and several children, and they may have also shared this bedroom. We depict how the plantation would have had flax and cotton and so forth. We have homeschool, public school, and private school children that like to come here, so we've just temporarily moved these fiber arts tools to depict how you would take seed from the field and clean it and then weave it and turn it into yarn. The next room to your right as you're coming out is the children's bedroom. You can step in there if you would. Thank you.
You should see those stairs, man. They go straight up. Which ones? We passed the door. Touch it, Daddy. Touch it. Look at the door. Cradle.
Mr. Ramsey had a lot of children from his different marriages,
Look at that.
as well as his own. And the children would have been up here, and they would have played, they would have had their lessons with their tutors, and they would have had their meals until they learned their manners and learned to make conversation at the adult dinner table. Then they could have their meals downstairs. But this was a major functioning room all day. Can you imagine with the windows up and the breeze crossing through the upstairs and the birds and the trees, how peaceful it must have been? The type of beds that are in this room are the rope style beds. There are ropes underneath that help keep the mattress in its place. The mattresses would have been formed from materials on the plantation. Bird feathers, flax, all number of things, husks. Have you heard the expression, don't let the bed bugs bite?
Right.
Thus the
That's where it
stick.
comes from.
So you might want to feature a mattress before you go to sleep, and also use the turnkey to tighten the ropes so that keeps you up nice and tight. So no lumpy bed, no bugs, and keep your rope bed tight. The beds are high because as there weren't any closets, people would keep everything in their trunks. So we have a deerskin one underneath there, just
was
as an
wondering about
indication. There's also a chamber pot under one of the beds, which would have accompanied the chambered pot chair,
See, I
which
told
had a
you.
little lid in the bottom. And somebody in the morning had the pleasure of the chores of getting all that chamber pot out. The massive fireplaces in this house were important for comfort and warmth. You would have taken the embers and putting them in that copper device there that's round and a handle, tucked it underneath the mattress. The foot warmer, that square item that has a metal handle on it, I imagine Thomas Hope would have wanted that full of hot coal before everybody went to bed in his room, because there is no fireplace in that room. There's a baby rocking bed, and then an original embroidery done by Eliza when she was off at college at Salem in the Carolinas.
That's cool.
It's a birth embroidery. That's a very, very rare object here in Tennessee to have
Wow.
anything like that. She's depicting the births of the family.
Hmm.
You know how people have a family Bible, how you put your birth and death announcements there? She was using the embroidery method.
I thought that looked old.
This trundle style bed has a bed underneath it that rolls out.
It's right there.
Good ideas.
Let's go on to the master bedroom now on the other side of the hall.
12 triangles, this crib coat. It's the quilt pattern, 12 triangles it's called. Excuse me. I like that trunk.
Yeah.
It's cool.
Are you having a nice time?
Yes, I love it. We've
Good,
just
thank
come
you.
back from the Mabry house.
Oh, good. I'm glad you're making a day of it.
They had 14 children. The Mabry family? Can't imagine having 14 children.
Between his own children and the children that died in early child time, and then he's married, he had 25.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Holy cow.
This is the master bedroom. The four-poster bed is showing you the curtains around that would be used for privacy as well as to protect from bugs. Drained, they break down the beaver dams to let all that water drain away. Unfortunately, his second wife had died from malaria. You would have changed out the curtains for the seasons. Maybe they were a little heavier for the winter. And being that this is the frontier era and there aren't hotels along the way, the Ramseys were often being hosts to the people that were coming through for business. You would have been staying in the same room as your host. So we have a bed here depicting that. One of the heirloom pieces in this room are these precious wooden dolls.
Yes.
Children normally would have played with corn husk style dolls, but these would be considered fine dolls in their era because of their wooden and painted faces. We also believe that those are Eliza's shoes. Those were found by an archaeologist on the barn property here.
Wow.
We're showing you a wash basin. In the morning you would have had your spring water brought in and you would have washed your face and looked in your mirror. And then the death embroidery is accompanying a companion piece that Eliza did it while she was away at college. This is depicting the deaths of members of her family. That's a very rare thing to have here in Tennessee today. The mantels in both of these bedrooms upstairs are of the Georgian style of the house. There's an attic above us. It's not part of the tour, but it's possible maybe some of the children may have stayed up there too if they had to give up their own beds for company. I like to think that this house was built in 1797, and the Ramseys Mr. Ramsey gave 36 years of his life to civil service, and his children followed suit, doing much of the same. But back in 1797, when this was built, imagine the founding fathers were still with us. George Washington was still up in Monticello till 1799. So just being in this house and imagining our early country is really remarkable that it's standing, because back in the frontier era, you had wooden frame houses and log homes, and here he had the fortitude to have this stone built from natural outcroppings of blue limestone and pink marble. Just to point out here, I guess people were more petite 223 years ago because we had to make this stairwell ADA compliant, so we had to raise the handrail up. But the original
was
handrail
talking
was
about
down
that.
here.
Yeah,
So,
that's true.
short people. So we're gonna make our way down the staircase, and you'll be exiting out the back door with two double red doors. We have some literature, I see some of you already have. Come back and see us, we do vintage baseball, circa 1864 rules in our 100-acre field. I think the next one up is Saturday, Father's Day weekend. Bring a sack chair and come on out. And look on our website calendar for other events. It takes a lot of work to sustain a piece of history like this, so if you're visiting, membership and so forth, it will help. Tell your friends to come see us too. We appreciate it. So let's make our way down.
Thank you.